Hello, everyone. Welcome to my little corner of the internet. I am Julie Clough, and I just wanted to be here with all of you. Welcome all the new people here. So many people have come over and joined us from my interview with Next Level Soul. If you're familiar with Next Level Soul, and if you're not familiar, you need to be familiar. It's an amazing podcast that's been around for relatively short period of time. I would say probably 3, 4 years, something like that. And Alex Ferrari is just an amazing host. And I had the privilege of being on his show, going down to his studio in Austin and being on his show. And I just wanted to say hi to all the new people. I've done so many interviews recently, and so I'm just thanking all of you for coming over, subscribing, showing up, being here. A huge thank you for trusting me to do sessions for you, to bring you uplifting content, and I'm just so grateful for everyone I get to work with. So, if we haven't met before, if you came across my video through some other means, I'm Julie Clough. I had a spiritually transformative experience. It really started with the passing of my two youngest children in a horrific rollover car accident. That was the day that I experienced my own ego death, I would say. That was a tremendously challenging time. And then in 2010, I had a miraculous healing from that experience. And and that's when the lights went on, and that's when I feel like my life began. And all of that experience, which I shared on, I share on my on these interviews that I do. Uh, the spirit has spoken to me over the years. I've had these amazing experiences with my loved ones on the other side, with other people's loved ones on the other side. I eventually acknowledged that I was a medium, a psychic medium, and began training formally because, we can maybe all throw a basketball, but we can't all be Michael Jordan. And so it did require training. It required coaching. So I would understand how to deliver the messages that I was receiving and how to tune in even deeper. And it's just been amazing to go through that process. So yeah, I call myself a spiritual medium because I do channel. And you'll see my channeled messages on Sundays. I also will post shorter messages on social media and even on YouTube, in Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Those are my primary spots. You can find all my links. If you're interested in a private session, you can find my links at julieclough.com. But there's so many things to talk about. And so again, this is, a welcome video, but I also wanted to talk about some things. Um, and I want to know what you want to hear more about because I've been thinking a lot about so many people um, who commented on the interview with Alex over at Next Level Soul, commented on how helpful it was to hear about grief and loss and healing from loss, and that is a huge part of my story. I also um, talk about religious deconstruction and spiritual autonomy. And yesterday I saw Disclosure Day. What did you think? I actually really loved it. I think my expectations were kind of low because I was delayed in seeing it, and so many people had not been particularly happy with it. But I don't want to go into all of the nitty-gritty of Disclosure Day, but I really enjoyed it, and I resonated with it in a lot of ways that maybe I can get into later. So I want to hear more about what you want to hear more about. I do want to talk a little bit today about signs from our loved ones, grief, loss, healing. And I want to, at the end, I'm going to share this remarkable story that just happened a few days ago that just still, I'm just astonished. The chances of that happening are like one in a gazillion. Is gazillion really a number? I don't know. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about signs from our loved ones. I was doing a reading for someone a couple weeks ago, just before I left on vacation, actually. And and her father came through, which is this beautiful energy. I want to share a little, as I'm talking about that, I want to share a little bit about what happened in that reading because she was very concerned about the manner in which he passed, which is so common. Like we're always, we love when we love people, we don't want to see people suffer. We don't want to see people, die alone. We don't want to see people go through the process of passing. And yet her father confirmed, like so many others do, that even though from an earthly standpoint, from a human ego standpoint, he appeared to be suffering a lot in the last few months and even years of his life. But he kept telling her, he says, it was a blip. It was a blip. Like once he got to the other side and was able to begin letting go of the humanness that we carry here, the 3D aspects of what we carry here. He's like, that was like a blip. He wanted her, and I'm sharing this with you because I feel like this is um, something that all of our loved ones want for us. He wanted her to remember the happy times. He wanted her to remember him as this vital, active, loving father. But one of the things that came through that was a little unusual and a little fun, because he was a lot of fun, was that he was sending raccoons as a sign from him. She actually had a night where she was in her place and she lives on the second story. And she's like, I didn't even realize. She told me that she says, I didn't even realize there was a ledge there, much less that an animal could stand on it. But she looked over and there was a raccoon looking through her window. And she said she felt like that raccoon was smiling at her. And there was other aspects of the raccoons and how those were showing up for her. But our loved ones do send us signs. Maybe you've heard me talk about, I think I've talked about it on a lot of the interviews that I've done, that my daughter who passed in 2007, I think this has been probably 5 years ago now. She started sending me 12s, and I was not a person that really connected to signs, believed in signs, thought that was significant. I would hear people talk about getting signs, and I'd think, oh, that's nice, but I didn't really connect to that idea. But she started sending me so many 12s, and 12s is the day of my birthday. She started sending me so many 12s, I could not ignore it. And it sent me down this um, path of looking up, like, what does the number 12 mean? What does it represent? It connected with me with my angels. I started looking at angel number 12, and it's just been phenomenal and really interesting. I know one person who received signs from their loved ones in water drops from nowhere. Like there was no water source anywhere, and a drop of water would land on a paper or in a very significant spot. Um, it's probably been maybe 3 years ago now. One day I was out front in front of my house. No one smokes in my house. There were no neighbors out. I've never smelt cigarette smoke on, out my front door ever before or since. And one of my sister came over to visit, and when we were walking into the house, we both smelled cigarette smoke, and we both looked at each other and said, "Daddy," like because our father was a heavy smoker, like he smelled like smoke all the time. And that was, we both thought of that. And she's not a person that really connects to these types of signs either. But um, I've learned in very, very big ways to keep track of the signs that our loved ones, that our angels, our spirit guides are sending us. Um, and when I started to keep track of all the signs I was receiving, whether it was animals or numbers or some other unusual event, which I'm going to share with you in a minute. It's going to blow you away. Uh, when we start keeping track of it, when I started keeping track of it, I was noticing it. I began noticing it multiple times a day. Like I said, numbers, animals, significant things, something somebody said that caught my attention. That's another way that my guides talk to me. You know, they talk to me like I hear them in my head. Like not all, it's not like I'm hearing this dialogue all day long every day. It's not like that at all. But um, when I hear about something, one of the examples I love to use is this idea of when I guess it's been probably 3 years ago now, when the whale watching trip, and again, you can go to one of my interviews and hear about the whale watching trip. I'm probably going to do a whole class about the whale watching trip because there's so much to learn there. But I was given instruction after that trip that I needed to start teaching about angels. And so I started teaching about angels. And as I was teaching about angels, somebody asked me in the class one night, they said, what do you know about the Akashic records? And frankly, I didn't know anything about the Akashic records. And then a couple of days later, I had a dream. And then a couple of days later, I was talking to a friend and I was telling this friend about my dream. And he said, sounds like you were in the Akashic records. And when I hear repeated things like that, like somebody asking me about the Akashic records, and so I started looking it up and examining it. And then I have this significant dream that felt significant. It wasn't just one of these processing dreams that we have. It felt significant. There was very significant pieces of this dream. And then somebody else telling me that my dream was about the Akashic records. I pay attention when I receive specific information like that multiple times. If I hear something two or three times and it catches my attention, like Suzanne Giesemann says, it snags me, then I'm going to pursue that. And it was in the Akashic Record training where I discovered that I could be a vocal channel. It was when I started practicing Akashic Record readings that I began channeling. So that was a significant piece. So that's another thing I always, invite people to recognize things that are coming up in multiples and kind of going down that path. Um, Remember that you are always your highest authority. Um, we don't want to, like, we want to pursue a path as it feels aligned for us. And if it doesn't feel aligned, set it aside. If the things that I'm saying right now don't feel aligned, some of them do, some of them don't, take what resonates and leave the rest behind. But, as I mentioned before, grief is part of the healing process. And a lot of times our loved ones, I just want to share that our loved ones are always close to us. Our loved ones who have passed are always close to us. They're always available to us. They're literally only a thought away. Time and space is very different on the other side. When we're grieving, it almost acts as a barrier between that communication with the other side. And that can feel hard to hear. And, but also grief is part of the healing process. So I think about my daughter who was on a trip a few months ago and she had a fall and hurt her ankle. And it was a significant bone bruise and she had to stay off of it for several months and to allow it to heal. The pain was part of the healing process. The pain signaled the need for healing. Grief is pain. It's part of the healing process. It's part of the way that our system communicates to us that rest is needed, care is needed, additional support is needed, and that we can take that time and that space. It's so important that we take the time and the space to attend to our sadness and to our grief. This is a healthy part of our human experience. So, as I've mentioned it previously, again, if you saw that interview or another interview, maybe you heard me talk about how everything that I needed for healing was available to me at the time of the accident. In other words, all the truths that I came to understand over time were true at the time that the accident happened. But in my humanness and in my healing process, I needed time to let go of different things. And I'm not talking about letting go of the person, but just like it, we're assimilating a new way of being. We're digesting the sadness, we're digesting the grief, we're allowing the sadness to move through us. And there's a whole process that I've walked clients through that help us to do that. And I won't take the time to go into that right now. Maybe I will in another video. Again, let me know what you are needing, but just know that I'm very grief aware. And that's one of the things I feel like that um, is really helpful when I'm doing mediumship readings. Tears are 100% okay. They're welcome. You can be sad. It's a normal part of life. It's a normal part. I always hesitate sometimes when I'm telling my story because I'm in such a good place now. Life is so good, and people have a hard time wrapping their head around that when they're in the middle of the darkness of grief. They think that, and I did the same thing, in my grief. Like I would see people who were doing better, and I would think, I'm never going to get there. I should be doing better. All those things are shame thoughts and are not helpful. So it's grief is inviting us to hold on to, like I love using physical examples. So I'll go back to my daughter's injury. In that injury, she's holding on to the fact that healing is necessary and there's a process for healing. And she's holding on to that she will get better and that she will go back to regular activities. Like she loves to play tennis. So she will go back to those regular activities. So we're taking it one day, sometimes 1 minute, sometimes 1 hour at a time. But I want to share this remarkable story with you. So I have a very, very good friend. Her name is Lisa, and her son Jared passed away 3 years ago. He had had significant health issues for many years. He was in his 20s. He was young when he passed, and he is just like right here with her. She has learned to communicate with him, but I was in Spain recently, and if you follow me on Instagram, maybe you've seen some of my pictures. There's probably some more pictures coming still of that trip because I just got back a couple of days ago, which is why I'm doing this video now to say hi. But at any rate, my good friend Lisa, she's a beautiful person. She also has studied mediumship. She's been a guest on my show. I'll link her episode below as well. So I'll link the episode to my Next Level Soul interview, and I'll link the video of Lisa's interview. Anyway, I was in Spain with family traveling, and Lisa and I are on a group thread with a small group of friends. And on my trip, I wasn't doing a lot of texting with people. I was just enjoying my trip and enjoying the people that were with me. But for whatever reason, on I think it was like the second or third night, um, just a couple nights before I came home, I ended up, sorry about that. I had an alarm set. um, my husband and I ended up at a restaurant, and I was texting this group, and I don't even remember exactly what we were texting. But like I said, I'd been pretty quiet there because I'd been on vacation. And I was texting this group and I was just telling them about, just very briefly saying, yeah, we're on this trip. We're eating at this great restaurant, this great healthy restaurant. And in that moment, I picked up my phone. I took a picture of the restaurant. And if you've eaten in Europe, especially, I think, you find this in a lot of places, but in Europe, especially, sometimes the tables are really close. And I was trying to be a little sneaky because I didn't want the people next to me to feel like I was taking a picture of them because I wasn't. I was taking a picture of the restaurant. So I snuck this picture, and that was the only picture of the probably dozens, maybe hundreds of pictures I took while I was there. That was the only picture I sent, texted to that group. And I said, we're eating in this really yummy place. And again, I don't remember the context of this little small conversation I was having in this text thread. And Lisa responded and she said, and this was a while later, like maybe 30 minutes later, I'd already left the restaurant. And she texted and she said, do you know the people sitting next to you? And I said, oh no, they're just strangers sitting next to me. I was just taking a picture of this really cool restaurant we were in. She said it looks so much like my cousin, and my cousin moved to Madrid. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. I mean, I just thought that alone was crazy that somebody sitting next to me looked like her cousin, had moved to Madrid. And then, so she said, I'm going to reach out. So she reached out to this girl's mom, who's her cousin, and the daughter's the cousin, cousin also. So anyway, she reached out to the mom and said, hey, my friend sent this picture. She's in Madrid, and I think this is your daughter. And she said, it is. We were all there. She was actually there too. It was so mind-blowing to think I was over there for more than 10 days. I had sent one picture to that text thread that happened to have a picture of Lisa's cousin in it, who she verified it was her and that she had been at that restaurant. I mean, it was so mind blowing. And I just felt like it was such a setup from Lisa's son. It was just remarkable. And I won't go, Lisa went into like why this was so significant for her, why this she really delved into it and said, okay, I mean, it's just so mind blowing. Are you mind blown by this, or is it just me? I just think it's crazy. Like one in a gazillion chance that I am sitting next to her cousin, that I just happened to snap a picture because I would never do that. That was so strange. And even at the time that I did it, I thought, well, this is a little funny, but I'm going to send this picture. I'm just still gobsmacked by the whole thing. I'm just like blown away. But this is how spirit works. This is how spirit communicates with us. This is, sometimes it's in these little subtle ways. And when we see something and we think, like the raccoon, like that woman when she started seeing these raccoons and she thought, is that my dad? And then in the reading, her dad confirmed it was him and that he was being playful with her and that he was wanting her to enjoy these signs from him. Anyway, life is beautiful. Spirit is beautiful. Thank you so much for being here. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know what like to hear more about. Like I said, I could talk more about grief and healing. I can talk more about mediumship. I can talk about, Disclosure Day and why that was significant to me. All those things are available to us. Anything that you'd like to know more about, connecting with your spirit guides, all of that. But have the most beautiful day, and thank you for being here. Bye.